Since being added in 1.20, Minecraft's archaeology system has stayed stagnant, bringing very little to the game in terms of gameplay and rewards. But what if Mojang were to change that? Changing a vastly overlooked system into one that's rewarded and raising the question, can Minecraft's archaeology system be saved? Well, let's take a look at some possible solutions. But before we go over that, let's first cover the current state of archaeology in Minecraft. Right now, archaeology is pretty bare with very little going on for it, which, to be fair, could be by design. However, the gameplay loop of archaeology feels very tedious, and I feel as if a lot of people don't actually enjoy going out of their way to interact with it. This is for many reasons, one of which being the lack of reward when going to many archaeology structures, with the main prizes being the sniffer egg, relic disc, armor trims, and pottery sherds, all of which, while nice novelty items, are purely cosmetic, and it doesn't create a large incentive for the average player to interact with archaeology. Now, does this mean that every single feature has to be a game-changing new item? No, not at all. But having some new tools or items in order to make archaeology more rewarding could be a very good step in making the system more enjoyable for players. But we can cover that in a little bit. As of editing this video, there are 5 places where you can find suspicious sand and gravel, those being the warm and cold underwater ruins, desert wells, desert temples, and trail ruins. And for a system meant to be interacted with, there are actually very few locations where the player actually gets to do so, with most of them being confined to the desert or more warm locations. That being said, I feel as if more structures should have archaeology blocks ingrained into them. For example, maybe adding suspicious gravel into mineshafts, or suspicious sand surrounding shipwrecks, in order to make archaeology feel more like a sister mechanic to exploring, similarly to what brewing is to crafting. Additionally, on the topic of the locations where you can find suspicious blocks, I feel like some new ones would help to spice up archaeology and make it more interesting, especially if they all had their own unique loot pools, and I actually have 3 ideas for some of these archaeology sites. My first idea for one of these is the dig site. When archaeology was first shown off during Minecraft Live in 2020, we were shown a dig site, and while not the most advanced, it could serve as a nice tutorial structure for the archaeology system for players who are unfamiliar with it. Maybe introducing suspicious dirt blocks based on the biome it's found in, and holding pretty standard loot considering that they would be pretty easy to spot in the wild. However, Mojang did briefly show off a different type of brush while showcasing this structure, so maybe the big prize of this structure could be a more efficient brush to make any structures encountered in the future easier to uncover. Another potential structure could be a more dangerous one, maybe a new dungeon where almost all of the loot is found in suspicious gravel, with the structure, while having calmer archaeology rooms, could also hold challenges in order to get from room to room. This would be a lot more intense than all of the other archaeology structures, and I feel like having mobs destroy some of the loot if possible could help make things feel risky, as well as if you don't play well enough, there's a chance that you lose out on some of the loot that the structure has to offer. As for the rewards, while obviously having new pottery sherds and trims, a new tool, possibly a climbing pick similar to the one from Sweetie's Archaeology, could be a unique item, especially if it had its own enchantments. Finally, my last idea for a new location could be in the Nether, maybe by introducing suspicious soul sand that spawns around the fossils. And while not introducing any new items, it could be a very useful alternative to get wither skulls, probably at the same percentage as the normal wither skeleton drop rate. However, it would bring an incentive into brushing these blocks in the Nether, but it would also come with risks, as due to it being a Soul Sand Valley exclusive, there would be a high risk of gas that could shoot down and destroy the blocks that the player is trying to excavate. Now, back to the structures that we already have, I think that the ocean ruins, desert well, and desert temples are fine with the items that they have. The desert structures were pre-existing, with the main focus of the temple being the loot in the middle, with the suspicious sand serving as a nice bonus for those with the brush, and the well was just a small upgrade for a previously useless structure. As for the sniffer, it is well-rounded, however it does leave a little to be desired, with the scrapped wall plants being one of those things, as well as possibly giving it a few other things to dig up. As for the trail ruins, while having a lot of cosmetic features, the structure itself has no functional items, and while that isn't necessarily a bad thing, as it does have armor trims and the relic disc, it can lead to a lot of players not feeling an incentive to interact with it. Now, what can we do to fix that? Well, maybe an additional feature of adding new upgrades to the brush, maybe through either upgrade templates or enchantments exclusive to the trail ruins. I'm thinking more of the latter, as having brushes being enchantable with something to make brushing go faster, or an upgrade to yield more scutes off of armadillos, or even being able to brush more items off of mobs would be cool. Or maybe even want to brush items out of the hands of players. That one's a stretch, but there's a lot of possible upgrades that could benefit the player with the addition of the brush enchantments. And if suspicious blocks were to be more present in structures, it would give players a lot more incentive to carry around a fully enchanted brush. Now, onto a couple of miscellaneous features. With an archaeology update, I feel like having a display item could be neat, similarly to item frames, but better for displaying them in more conventional ways. I can see it getting a lot of use from builders, as well as working as a redstone item, with comparators being able to detect any items on the displays. Another feature could be having cartographers trade in order to receive maps to some of these places, which I can assume would be somewhat difficult to spot, similarly to the trail ruins. All in all, I believe that if Mojang wants archaeology to be a major part of the game, it needs to be fleshed out, and having more archaeology spots in pre-existing structures alone could help with that. And so, to answer the question I asked at the start of the video, yeah, Minecraft's archaeology system is definitely a little bit flawed currently. But that doesn't mean it's not fixable, and while it definitely does need work in order to fill the role that Mojang wants it to, I think that it's very possible for that to happen. But those are just my ideas, so tell me in the comments if you have any different ones. I'd love to see them. Anyways, bye bye, subscribe, bye bye.